Start with the clue sitting in plain sight. The title promises a quote so deranged it sounds like a confession from a collapsing empire. We should invade Israel. And then the actual program is mostly an hour of speculative argument about Trump, Tehran, Netanyahu, and whether a deal is forming behind everyone's back. That mismatch matters, because it tells you what kind of object this is. Not an attempt to clarify a volatile diplomatic story, but a bait-and-switch where the most inflammatory phrase is used as the front door to a much fuzzier conversation the show never properly pins down. The video's substantive thesis is easy enough to state. Trump, after threatening Iran, now appears ready to sign some form of Tehran agreement. Israel may be sidelined, and this could either be a pragmatic peace move or a humiliating concession. Fine, that's a real question. But the show does almost nothing to establish the evidentiary floor before the panel starts free associating around it. We get a Piers Morgan monologue announcing a dramatic shift, a cloud of phrases like reports, raising questions, potential implications, and then straight into combat. No document on screen. No careful distinction between an actual signed framework, ongoing talks, a memorandum, a negotiating rumor, and the panel's own wishful or fearful projections. In a story about war, nuclear capability, and regional escalation, that vagueness is not a stylistic flaw. It is the whole problem. And once you notice that missing floor, the rest of the episode starts to look less like analysis and more like a staged collision of preloaded talking points. Piers' introduction frames the issue as a grand strategic rupture. Washington, Jerusalem, Tehran, betrayal, peace, regret. But the show is oddly reluctant to slow down and tell viewers what the alleged agreement actually contains beyond broad claims about Iran's nuclear program, and even a staggering late mention of a $300 billion US-Iran arrangement. That number should have forced the entire show to stop. Who proposed it? Over what horizon? Through what mechanism? Public money? Private investment? Sanctions relief? Conditional on what? Instead, it becomes just another accelerant thrown into a panel built to combust. Cenk Uygur is the engine of the episode, and also the clearest example of how this program confuses force with proof. He is totally in favor of Trump's peace deal almost immediately, then spends huge stretches of the debate widening the frame into a moral prosecution of Israeli exceptionalism and American double standards. Some of that critique lands because there is a genuine inconsistency in how the world talks about nuclear weapons in Israel versus Iran. But the show uses that inconsistency like a trapdoor. Once it opens, the original question, what is this deal? What does it require? What does Iran concede? What does the US concede? What are the enforcement mechanisms? What are the regional security implications? Falls out of sight. A valid moral grievance is used to evade the policy specifics that would have to be true for Cenk's optimism to mean anything. To be fair, the strongest substantive thread in the video is the one about hypocrisy. When the panel asks why Israel can possess a nuclear deterrent while its neighbors are told they cannot even approach one, that is not a frivolous provocation. It is the closest the show gets to a real explanatory framework, because it touches the actual architecture of Middle East power. Undeclared arsenals, U.S. patronage, deterrence theory, and the selective moral language of non-proliferation. But even here the program pulls up just as the conversation gets serious. It doesn't distinguish between civilian nuclear capacity and weapons development. It doesn't examine the IAEA context. It doesn't reckon with how Iran's regional proxy network changes the security calculation. And it doesn't ask the equally uncomfortable reverse question. If the principle is universal, what exactly is the path from double standard criticism to a safer regional order? The strongest part of the argument is also its biggest vulnerability, because it is treated as a rhetorical mic drop instead of a policy argument that needs testing. The supposed Trump-Netanyahu rupture gets similar treatment. The transcript flags a segment on whether Trump's relationship with Netanyahu is on the brink, and Piers clearly wants that as a dramatic spine, the strongman and his old ally drifting apart over Iran. But the show mostly handles the rift as atmosphere. It's a source of tension, not a subject of scrutiny. Were Israeli officials truly cut out of talks, and to what extent? Is Trump strategically distancing himself from Netanyahu, tactically pressuring him, or simply sending contradictory signals as he often does. The panel is happy to infer motive from rhetoric, but rhetoric is the cheapest material in politics. A serious program would force a separation between what Trump says, what negotiators are floating, what Israeli officials actually know, and what each guest is projecting onto the story for ideological reasons. This one blurs all four until the blur becomes the content. This is also where the format becomes more than an aesthetic complaint. A six-person remote panel on a subject this technical is not neutral packaging. It changes the truth value of the conversation. You can see it in the key frames, a tiled wall of faces, each guest carrying an entire worldview, all squeezed into television-sized bursts. The structure rewards instant certainty and punishes methodological caution. Nobody can spend 2 minutes saying, "Hang on, the premise itself is unstable. We need to verify the memorandum, the sanctions architecture, the sequencing of inspections, the role of Hezbollah, the leverage points with Lebanon." That kind of sentence kills television rhythm. So instead you get ideological compression. Cenk as anti-hypocrisy flamethrower, Brian Tyler Cohen as anti-Trump corrective, military and policy veterans as realism validators, Piers as ringmaster of escalating stakes. The audience is left with the feeling of depth because the accents and job titles are varied, when what they're mostly watching is a prestige version of Crossfire. And there is something morally strange about the way the episode handles war language. The title reaches for invasion. The opening frames a nuclear standoff as cliffhanger television. The discussion keeps hopping from peace deal to saber-rattling to Lebanon to regret to investment to betrayal, as if the sheer number of volatile nouns can substitute for a hierarchy of evidence. But these aren't abstract franchise plotlines. A U.S.-Iran agreement, if real, sits inside decades of sanctions, covert operations, proxy warfare, civilian vulnerability, and regional deterrence games. Packaging that into a spectacle where the most incendiary line is promoted harder than the legal and diplomatic substance feels like training the audience to consume brinkmanship as entertainment first and policy second. Notice what is missing from the case file. No sustained breakdown of the previous Iran nuclear deal beyond gesture-level comparison. No hard accounting of what Trump criticized in Obama's deal versus what he is allegedly willing to accept now. No granular discussion of verification, breakout time, sanction snapback, domestic Iranian politics, or the practical meaning of invest in Iran under a sanctions regime. Hezbollah and Lebanon appear as gravitational words, but the program never really traces how a Tehran agreement would alter the incentives of armed groups on the ground. Even Mike Pence's criticism seems to function mainly as an intra-Republican prop rather than something to anatomize. The video wants the authority of geopolitical seriousness without paying the cost of geopolitical specificity. So here's the late reveal. The real argument of this video is not Trump may sign a Tehran agreement. It's something more cynical and more familiar. That if you assemble enough antagonists around an unstable premise, the instability itself becomes the product. The uncertainty is not resolved, it is monetized. The show doesn't need to prove whether this is a breakthrough or a concession, because its actual commodity is the feeling of standing at the edge of a historic rupture while famous people shout over the map. That's why the episode feels so hollow even when it brushes against serious issues. It keeps converting questions that require documentation into arguments that reward temperament. My verdict is simple. This is a bad piece of political media wearing a serious suit. It identifies a real geopolitical dilemma: Trump, Iran, Israel, nuclear leverage, regional hypocrisy, and then squanders it in a format designed to generate heat before comprehension. The strongest evidence it offers is that there may be a contradiction between Trump's past posture and his current negotiations, and that Western nuclear morality is selective. Both points are worth examining. Neither is examined with anything like the rigor the title, the panel, or the subject demand. The conclusion is overstated because the evidence never catches up to the framing. If you want the feeling of a global crisis without the burden of actually understanding one, this episode is perfect. If you want analysis, it's a mirage. And if you like watching those mirages get pulled apart piece by piece, stay close. There are plenty more immaculate TV arguments hiding empty case files.